Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. My sister was already hammering on my front door when I froze. I'm Sam, 28, and that night still runs my life. She kept hitting the door harder, shouting my name like I owed her air. Behind me, Mark muttered something under his breath and walked away. Sam, open up please, I swear I'm not safe. Her voice cracked on that last word, and that did it. You know that pull you feel when family sounds broken. Logic just steps aside and watches you ruin yourself. I unlocked the door and she almost fell inside. Jenna clutched a stuffed suitcase with both hands, knuckles pale and tense. Her makeup was smeared, hair in a loose knot that looked like a fight. Her phone lit up again in her pocket and she flinched hard. Is that him? My voice came out tighter than I meant. She nodded fast, digging for the phone with shaky fingers. Yeah, it's him, he's blowing me up, he's insane. She hit decline, then turned the phone face down on my shoe rack. I can't go back there, Sam, I can't, not tonight. She looked past me into the apartment like she was already invited. That detail still bothers me now more than the crying. Mark leaned against the hallway wall, arms crossed tight. He gave her a small nod, not warm, just polite and tired. Hey, Jenna. She gave him this quick smile, wiped her cheeks with her wrist, and stepped inside. Her suitcase bumped the door frame and I jumped. It sounded way too loud in that small entrance. Just for a few days, she said, already kicking off her shoes. I said yes before Mark could even inhale. I grabbed blankets from the hall closet and dumped them on the couch. My hands moved on autopilot while my brain tried to catch up. In my head, I kept repeating one line. She needs help, you help her, that is what you do. Behind me, I heard Mark's soft, annoyed breath. Can we talk in the kitchen for a second? He did not raise his voice, which somehow felt worse. I told Jenna I'd be right back and followed him. The second the kitchen door swung shut, he turned on me. This wasn't the plan, Sam. He kept his voice low, jaw tight, eyes flicking toward the living room. We have one bedroom and rent due next week. I know, but look at hers. I grabbed the counter edge, trying to sound reasonable and calm. She's scared out there, Mark, I'm not sending her back into that. The word that caught me was back, like I knew anything about there. He rubbed his face, then tapped the fridge once like he needed grounding. How long is this supposed to last? A few days, I said, and hated how weak that sounded. Even then I knew a few days was a fantasy. She does this, Sam. He caught himself and bit off the rest of that sentence. I felt my whole body stiffen at that tiny pause. Does what? I asked, though I already hated the answer. He shook his head and looked straight at me. She drops in without warning, everything explodes, then we pick up pieces. I flinched because that was exactly what was happening. Please just trust me on this one, I said, voice shaking more than hers. We stared at each other across the small kitchen. Mark's eyes were tired, mine were stubborn and scared. I'm not throwing her out tonight, I said. That was the first line I drew and bent in the same breath. He let out this short, bitter laugh and looked away. I'm not asking you to toss her on the street. He pointed toward the living room with his chin. I just want to know where the line is before everything gets wrecked. I'll talk to her, I said, even though I had no plan. We'll set rules or something, she'll help out, it'll be fine. The word fine felt ridiculous even as it left my mouth. Mark heard it too, and his shoulders sagged like he already knew. We went back out and Jenna was scrolling her phone on the couch. Blankets were spread out like she had always lived there. She glanced up fast, eyes still a little red, mouth already forming a joke. You two whispering about me in there. House logistics, Mark said, grabbing his keys from the counter. He slipped on his shoes with quick, sharp movements. I'm going to run to the store, get some stuff. Translation was clear enough, he needed space from both of us. The door clicked behind him and the apartment felt smaller. Jenna sighed like she had just finished a long shift. She tossed her phone onto the coffee table and stretched her legs. Thank you for this, seriously, I was losing my mind there. I sat on the arm of the chair, not fully settling. What happened exactly this time? I tried to keep it gentle, but the last two words slipped out. She heard them and her face tightened for a second. He snapped again. She rubbed her wrist, then let her hand drop into her lap. He thinks I'm cheating, going through my stuff, checking my location nonstop. Her sentences came quick, no pauses, like she had rehearsed the beats. Did he hit you? My voice sounded flat, like I already expected. In? She looked at me, then away, then back again. No, not like that, but he threw a glass, it shattered everywhere. That answer sat wrong in my chest, and I pushed it down. Did you call anyone? You're the only person I can call for real. She said it fast, almost angry, like daring me to disagree. Her phone lit up again with his name across the screen. 3 messages stacked under the missed calls. She flipped it over like it burned and pulled the blanket higher. I'm blocking him tomorrow, I just need tonight to breathe. Do you want me to text him? I asked, throat dry. No, because he'll twist it and show it to everyone. She shook her head hard, hair whipping her cheek. He's already telling people I stole from him or some crazy thing. Those words lodged in my brain like a splinter. Stole from him. It felt important and confusing, but I told myself not to press. I chose comfort over clarity, and I still hate that choice. You're safe here, I said, and meant it in that moment. You can stay on the couch until you figure things out. I heard Mark's future argument forming even as I spoke. I pretended not to, like if I ignored it the problem would shrink. Jenna relaxed into the cushions and grabbed the remote. You're a lifesaver for real, I swear I'll make this easy. Every time someone promises that, you know it means the opposite. Back then I just nodded like an idiot. We ordered takeout because I did not feel like cooking and arguing. She kept talking through the food, explaining every tiny fight. Every story had him wild and her calm, him jealous and her patient. It sounded neat in a way real chaos usually doesn't. I laughed at the right spots and frowned on cue. I asked small questions that did not actually challenge anything. Part of me noticed how fast she jumped topics when details got messy. The rest of me kept refilling her drink and trying to be the good sibling. Mark came back while she was in the bathroom. He dropped the grocery bags on the counter and gave me a quick look. Well, he asked, voice low but sharper than before. I told him we would talk later, which was another lie I regret. He stalked the fridge in short, rushed movements, jaw clenched. I stood there useless, arms folded, wanting him to stop being right. Just remember you opened this door, he said, not even facing me. That line echoes in my head now more than the banging. Jenna came back out smiling like she had just washed off the night. Okay, I feel human again, she said, dropping onto the couch. She tugged the blanket over her legs and looked up at Mark. I really appreciate you both, I know this is a lot. Mark gave a tight little smile and headed toward the bedroom. I'm going to bed, long day tomorrow. He squeezed my shoulder on the way past, a quick silent warning. I stayed in the living room with Jenna and my growing knot of dread. We watched some random show while her phone kept buzzing beside her. At first she winced at every vibration, checking the screen then ignoring it. After a while she started rolling her eyes instead and making jokes. The fear faded faster than I expected, and that bothered me. One call came through with his name again and a long preview line. She stared at it, then hit decline, then opened her messages anyway. I watched her thumbs move fast, then stop, then delete the text. Not worth it, she said, but her eyes stayed glued to the screen. Do you want me to put that in the drawer? I asked. She hesitated, then laughed, short and sharp. No, I'm fine, I just like seeing him lose his mind a little. That sentence hit me harder than anything she had said all night. I should have picked up on that right there. The tiny smile, the way she enjoyed his panic, the twist in her tone. Instead, I told myself she was just venting after a rough night. That was me choosing the version of her I wanted, not the real one. By the time the credits rolled, she was half asleep on the couch. I pulled the blanket up around her shoulders and turned off the TV. Her phone lit up one last time with a new line of messages. I walked away before I could read them. In the hallway, I paused outside the bedroom door, hand on the knob. I could hear Mark moving around inside, pacing slow and careful. For a second, I almost turned back to the couch and took the blanket away. Instead, I went in, closed the door, and locked us all into that choice. I almost stepped on Jenna's arm getting out of bed. She'd rolled off the couch in her sleep and sprawled across the floor. Mark's side of the mattress was empty, the sheets already pulled tight. That was my first clue he was done arguing and had moved to quiet resistance. "Morning, roomies." Her voice came from the rug, blurry and way too cheerful. She blinked up at me, hair sticking out in every direction. I just stared because all I saw was permanent where she saw temporary. By the time I reached the kitchen, Mark was packing his lunch. He shut the container with more force than needed and didn't look up. "You good?" I asked, trying to sound casual and not terrified. "Fantastic," he muttered, which was his way of saying absolutely not. Jenna padded in behind me, blanket around her shoulders like a cape. She brushed past him to grab a mug, bumping his elbow on the way. "Sorry," she laughed, touching his arm for a second longer than necessary. He moved away like the counter suddenly became very interesting. "I figured we should talk about a few things," I started. Both of them went still in that tiny kitchen and my throat tightened. "Since we're all sharing space, let's just make it easy on everyone." I felt like a landlord with no contract and no idea what I was doing. "Ground rules, love it," Jenna said, hopping onto a stool. She swung her legs like a teenager in detention, amused and restless. Mark leaned back against the fridge and crossed his arms hard. I was stuck in the middle, literally and emotionally, and it showed. "So help with groceries, clean up after yourself, no random guests." The list came out fast because I didn't want to chicken out. "And please start looking for a job so you can get your own place soon." The last part landed heavy, and I instantly regretted the exact wording. Her smile twitched, then came back brighter, almost overdone. "Totally fair, I'm not here to be dead weight, promise." She squeezed my wrist, then looked toward Mark like she wanted backup. He gave a small nod, but his eyes stayed flat. "Oh, and our bedroom is off limits, that's our space." I said that part slowly, watching her face for any hint of pushback. "Got it, your love nest, I will not invade," she joked, hands up. My skin crawled a little, and I pretended it was just because I was tired. "Cool, solved," she added, sliding off the stool. "I'll shower and then I'll hit the job sites, I swear." She grabbed her phone from the counter with a little flourish. One glance at the screen, and her mouth tightened in a way she tried to hide. The bathroom door shut and the pipes started humming. Mark looked at me like I'd just handed a stranger our keys. "You really think any of that sticks?" he asked, voice quiet but sharp. I told him it would, and even now I'm embarrassed I believed myself. "She agreed," I said, which sounded weak the second it left my mouth. She agreed because it kept her here, not because she meant it. His reply punched straight through the little bubble of optimism I'd built. I laughed it off, but my stomach had that slow drop feeling. "You want me to what, kick her out right now?" I asked. I knew that wasn't what he wanted, but I needed him to say it. He shook his head and grabbed his bag from the chair. "I want you to remember this conversation when things blow up." The shower shut off and we both went silent. Jenna walked back in wrapped in a towel, humming under her breath. "Okay, I'm human again, who's using the bathroom next?" Mark checked the time and reached for the door instead. "I'm heading out," he said, finally glancing at her. "Have a good one," she chirped, giving him a small two-finger salute. He paused like he was going to add something else but didn't. The door closed and left his annoyance hanging in the air with me. Once he was gone, Jenna dropped onto the couch clutching her phone. "I'll start sending applications in a minute, I just need coffee first." She opened some app and started scrolling with intense focus. From where I stood, it did not look like job hunting. "You know rent's tight, right?" I asked, leaning on the doorway. She glanced up, eyes wide, like I'd accused her of stealing already. I know, that's why I'm here hustling," she said, waving the phone. A dating profile was open on the screen for half a second before she flipped it. I decided to let that slide and grabbed my laptop from the table. "Fine, but I'm serious about the chores and stuff." "Relax, big sibling, I'll pull my weight," she replied, stretching out. Her feet landed right where my head usually rested during movie nights. By midday, the first plate appeared in the sink. I rinsed it, telling myself it was nothing, just one dish. By evening there were 4, plus a pan with something glued to it. I felt ridiculous getting angry at soap bubbles, but that's where we were. Hey, can you rinse things after you eat? I called from the kitchen. She was sprawled on the couch again, watching some loud show. Oh my god, yes, sorry, I'll do it later, she yelled back, not moving. Later never arrived, which became its own pattern. That afternoon, she wandered into our room while I folded laundry. She walked straight to my dresser and started flipping through shirts. These are cute, can I borrow one for like today? She asked. The word borrow did a lot of work in that sentence. Depends which one, I said, trying to keep it light. She grabbed a top I actually liked and held it against herself in the mirror. This one is perfect, I'll give it back after my life calms down. I knew exactly how long that meant and still nodded. When Mark came home that night, Jenna was in my clothes on our couch. She was curled up sideways, legs tucked, laughing at something on her phone. He stopped in the doorway and took her in with a quick sweep. I watched something in his expression flicker and it scared me. Busy day, he asked, dropping his keys next to the sink. The busiest, she answered, rolling her eyes dramatically. I was filling out applications and trying not to have a breakdown. She never specified where she'd actually applied. Which places? I asked, leaning over the back of the couch. She rattled off 3 store names so fast it sounded rehearsed. Mark's eyebrows lifted a little at the speed of it. I pretended not to notice because I wanted to stay on her side. After dinner, we tried to settle into our normal shows. Mark sat at one end of the couch, I took the other, Jenna in the middle. At first it felt crowded but workable, almost cozy. Then she started leaning toward him whenever she laughed. Stop, you're making me spill, she squealed when he bumped her. Her hand landed on his knee and stayed there longer than needed. He shifted, pulled his leg away, eyes on the screen. I caught all of it and still told myself it was innocent. I got up to grab water and paused in the hallway. From there, I could hear them talking without seeing their faces. She asked him about work, about his boss, about his long days. His answers were short at first, then gradually longer. By the time I walked back in, they had an entire joke going. Something about a coworker and a broken copier, inside humor already. I laughed along even though I had missed the setup. That moment right there was the first time I felt edged out in my own place. The next morning, her phone alarm went off and she didn't move. Mark was tying his shoes when it started blaring from the living room. Is that her job search alarm? He asked, staring at me. I walked out and turned it off because she slept through the whole thing. She eventually emerged around noon wearing that same borrowed shirt. I'm going to hit those places today, hand out resumes, she said. For real, I just needed to catch up on sleep first. She yawned so dramatically, I wanted to shake her. When are you going? I asked, checking the time on my watch. In a bit, after I finish this episode, it keeps auto-playing. Her eyes never left the screen, thumb tapping through notifications. Every new delay tugged at my patience like somebody testing a wire. She finally left an hour later with her hair done and my jacket on. Mark texted me from work 20 minutes after. Wanna bet whether she actually drops off anything? His message read. I stared at the words, then put my phone face down like a coward. When she came back that evening, she dumped a paper bag on the counter. Look, I even brought snacks, I'm not a total mooch, she grinned. I glanced for any sign of paperwork, any hint of effort. Nothing showed except a receipt and some crumpled napkins. How'd it go? I asked, forcing my tone to stay upbeat. So good, people loved me, I'll probably get calls tomorrow. She talked about a manager who complimented her and asked for her number. Somehow the conversation sounded more flirty than professional. Later that week, her stories about her boyfriend started shifting. One night he was broke and refused to work. The next he apparently had money and used it to keep her dependent. Both versions came out confident, like she believed them in the moment. Wait, I thought he didn't have a job, I asked once. She blinked, then laughed it off with a wave. Oh, I meant he doesn't work consistently, he's lazy but somehow loaded. The explanation tangled itself and I felt something twist in my chest. Mark noticed too, even if he didn't jump in. He watched her while she talked, jaw working like he was biting back comments. When she left the room to grab her drink, he looked at me. You hearing the same story I'm hearing? He asked quietly. She's stressed, things blur when you're scared, I answered. I hated how defensive I sounded even to myself. I'm just saying her script keeps changing, he replied, eyes tired. I flipped channels and pretended the show demanded my focus. Chores turned into their own battleground over the next few days. Laundry spilled out of the basket and onto the couch. My makeup bag gained extra fingerprints and fewer items. Every time I opened my closet, something of mine was gone. One night, I walked in to find her sitting on our bed. She was scrolling through her phone, shoes kicked off, drink on the nightstand. Hey, I was just borrowing the mirror, it has better lighting, she said. I stared at the spot where my rule had dissolved. That's not what we talked about, I amended her, leaning on the doorway. She rolled her eyes like I'd asked her to pay rent in gold. I'm not messing up your sacred space, calm down, she muttered. My chest burned, but I let it go again because confronting her exhausted me. All of this might sound small stacked like this. A dish here, a shirt there, one rule nudged, one joke too familiar. At the time it felt like standing in shallow water while the tide crept higher. By the time I realized I was actually in trouble, it was already over my head. The buzzer started screaming and Jenna dropped her fork. It clattered off the plate and onto the floor between us. We both stared at the door like something might kick it in. The buzzer kept going, long and steady, like whoever was downstairs refused to blink first. She checked her phone with jerky movements. Her eyes went straight to one name and all the color left her face. It's him. Her voice came out thin and high, like she was already bracing for impact. Mark looked up from the couch, remote forgotten in his hand. Are you expecting anyone else? He asked, watching her knock the door. She shook her head and backed away from the hallway like it could reach her. Inside my chest something clenched, and stupid as it sounds, I took that as proof. The buzzer blared again, harder, like he was leaning on the butts. I walked to the intercom because somebody had to move. My thumb hovered over the talk button for a second too long. Yeah, I finally managed, trying to sound bigger than I felt. Is Jenna there? His voice crackled through the speaker, deep and way too calm. I just need to talk to her, I know she's up there. Hearing his voice made everything real in a way her stories hadn't. Jenna shook her head so fast her hair whipped her cheeks. Hang up please, don't let him up here. Her fingers dug into my arm, nails sharp, breath coming in quick bursts. I could feel her shaking through my sleeve, and it hooked straight into my guilt. You can talk to me, I answered, pushing the button again. She doesn't want to see you, you need to leave the building. There was a short silence on the line that felt like someone loading a decision. I'm not leaving without my stuff, he said, voice dropping lower. What stuff? I asked, even though I knew I shouldn't. Things I paid for, things she walked out with, my card. Card, that word snapped my attention harder than anything else. Behind me, Jenna squeezed my arm once and then let go. I'm serious, man, I'm not here to fight. His voice still sounded way too controlled, which somehow scared me more. I just want my things back and to hear her say it's over. The buzzer clicked off, but the silence got heavier instead of lighter. We're calling the cops if you don't leave. Mark spoke from behind me now, closer than before. He crossed his arms, setting his stance like he meant every word. I clung to that posture because mine felt flimsy. You can call whoever you want. The intercom crackled again with his answer. I'm not doing anything wrong standing on a public sidewalk. He stressed public like he knew exactly where the line was. Jenna clutched the back of my shirt and buried her face between my shoulders. Don't let him in, Sam, I'm begging you, don't buzz him up. Her voice broke on the word begging, and I felt my defenses harden around her. Fear does that, it makes you pick a side before you check the facts. I'm coming down, I told the intercom, surprised at my own words. Stay out front and keep your hands to yourself. Mark turned his head so fast I heard his neck crack. What are you doing? He whispered, eyes wide. I'm not letting him near her door. That sounded brave in my head and reckless everywhere else. I'll talk to him, I'll get this over with, then he's gone. Even now I cringe at how sure I tried to sound. Or he pulls you into his drama and we're stuck in it. Mark stepped closer, voice low, shoulders tense. You don't actually know everything that happened between them. The truth of that landed, but Jenna's breathing against my back landed harder. Stay here with her, I said, grabbing my keys from the hook. If he gets weird, call the cops, don't hesitate. Mark stared at me like I was walking into a live wire on purpose. You sure you know what you're stepping into? He asked, one last shot. No, I answered honestly, hand already on the knob. But I'm not hiding behind the door while he yells up here. The hallway outside felt cooler than our apartment, sharp against my skin. I wish that had been enough to make me turn around. The stairwell felt narrower than usual on the way down. Every step echoed louder than it should, like my body wanted to dramatize the moment. My chest beat against my ribs in ugly, uneven punches. I kept picturing Jenna's face, not his. The front doors were partially propped open, and I could see him through the gap. He stood near the sidewalk, hand in his pockets, pacing in short lines. He looked more like a guy waiting on a late ride than some raging monster. That alone rattled me, because I'd built him up as something else. Sam. He spotted me as soon as I stepped outside. He lifted one hand halfway, not quite a wave, not quite a threat. That small, awkward gesture hit me harder than a shout would have. Up close he looked tired, jaw rough, eyes ringed like he hadn't slept. Not excusing anything here, just describing the shock to my system. This wasn't the wild-eyed villain I'd pictured from Jenna's stories. That gap between expectation and reality created its own kind of vertigo. You don't get to be out here freaking her out. I stopped a few steps away, just beyond arm's reach. If she doesn't want to see you, that's it, night's over. I planted my feet like that would somehow anchor the whole situation. She walked out with my wallet and 2 bags of my things. He didn't shout, which made the sentence land sharper. You can hate me all you want, but I'm not letting that slide. The certainty in his tone scraped against everything I thought I knew. You threw a glass at her. The accusation came out harsher than I'd planned. You track her phone, you blow up her messages, you scare her. Listing it like that made me feel righteous and stupid at the same time. He stared at me for a long beat, chest rising, jaw tight. I knocked a glass off the counter when she told me she drained my card. He moved his hand in a quick flicking motion like he was reliving it. It shattered on the floor nowhere near her, she stepped in it on purpose. I hated that the detail sounded specific. Abusers can be specific, though that was my counter in my head. She told me you threw it at the wall next to her face. Each word came out clipped like I was hammering nails. He huffed out one bitter half-laugh and looked away. Of course she did. He kicked at a crack near his shoe, then looked back up at me. She tells every new audience a slightly different version until it fits. You're just trying to make her look crazy, I replied, arms folding. It was a defensive move, more for me than for him. I watched her panic when that buzzer went off. Even as I said it, a small voice reminded me she adjusted fast to most things. I'm not saying she never felt scared, he answered, hands lifted. I'm saying she knows exactly how much that fear gets her. He leaned forward just enough to make the point without crossing the line. Check your bank apps in a week, see what I'm talking about. That hit a nerve I didn't want him anywhere near. You're accusing her of stealing from us now too, I snapped. You hear yourself right now. Anger felt safer than doubt, so I grabbed it and held on. She walked out with my credit card in her bag. He patted his pocket like to prove it was empty. I didn't realize until after she had already left and she's not answering. His eyes flicked up toward our windows with a mix of hurt and fury. You can call your bank and sort that out, I said, pulse racing. You don't need to stalk our building to do that. Each word tasted like metal in my mouth. I did not want to picture Jenna sliding cards into her wallet like trophies. I just wanted to see if she'd hand it over without making me the villain again. He blew out a slow breath, shoulders slumping for the first time. Every time she jumps ship, the next person becomes her soldier. That line landed in a place I really didn't want to inspect. Look, you're not coming up. I shook my head once firm to convince both of us. She doesn't want contact, that's the end of it tonight. The word tonight hung there like I'd left a door cracked open. He studied my face like he was checking for cracks. Does she tell you everything? He asked, voice softer now. Or just the parts that make you scoop her up and fight her battles? The worst part is I didn't have an honest answer ready. You should go, I pushed, needing the scene to end. If you keep hanging around, we will involve the police. I gestured toward the building cameras, hoping they worked. My hand trembled, which undercut the whole tough act. He noticed the movement and his shoulders tightened again. Yeah, I see it now, he muttered, gaze drifting back up. She's already painted me as some dangerous psycho, right? The word psycho stung because it came straight from Jenna's earlier rant. All I know is she showed up terrified. That was true, at least in that moment by the door. And I'm not going to ignore that because you want your stuff. It sounded noble when really it was more about my own narrative. He stared at me for another long second, then nodded once. Fine, keep her, keep the drama, keep the lies. He took a small step backward, then another, hands still visible. She'll turn the same story on you eventually, you'll see. That last sentence hit like a cold bucket. Over the head. I actually flinched, which annoyed me enough to double down. Good night, I snapped, even though nothing about the night felt good. He turned away and walked toward the street without looking back. I waited until he was out of sight before going back in. On the way up the stairs, my legs felt heavier than usual. I kept replaying his version of the glass, the card, everything. By the time I reached our floor, my brain was a tangled knot. Jenna was standing just inside the apartment, ear pressed to the door. She jumped back when it opened, then forced a shaky laugh. I wasn't spying, I just got nervous when it got quiet. Her eyes scanned my face for damage, real or imagined. What did he say? She asked, voice already tightening. Did he threaten you? Did he try to push past you? She grabbed my wrist and turned it like she expected bruises. The speed of her questions felt a little too ready. He wanted his card and his stuff, I answered, kicking off my shoes. I told him to go through the bank and leave us alone. I left out the part where he accused her of draining him. That omission felt small then and massive now. He's unbelievable, she snapped, pacing toward the couch. First he calls me a thief, then he shows up here like I kidnapped his wallet. She threw herself down and grabbed a pillow, hugging it tight. Mark watched from the kitchen doorway, reading every twitch. Did he say anything else? Mark asked, eyes pinned on me. He already sensed I was editing, that's the worst part. I shrugged, trying to make my body look looser than I felt. Same old garbage, he thinks he owns her. Jenna's eyes filled fast, tears sliding down without much warning. You believe him, don't you? She blurted, staring straight at me. You went down there and now you're second-guessing everything I told you. Her voice had this sharp edge that cut right into my defensiveness. I believe you left a situation that scared you. That was the only sentence I trusted completely. I believe he crossed lines and you didn't feel safe. I avoided anything involving money because that whole topic terrified me. It wasn't just feeling unsafe. She wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand. He'd hole me up in that apartment and monitor every move I made. Her breath hitched and she curled in on herself on the couch. Every time I tried to leave, he'd block the door. She mimed a body in a doorway, shoulders squared, arms wide. And when I finally worked up the nerve to grab my things, he snapped. Her eyes flicked to me, daring me to doubt that word. My stomach twisted because the door part was new. He hadn't mentioned that, obviously, but still. Pieces weren't fitting smoothly, and I kept shaving them down in my head. That's what loyalty does sometimes, it sandpapers red flags. I'm glad you're here, I told her, sitting on the armrest. I'm glad you walked out of whatever that was. She leaned into my leg like she needed physical reassurance. Do you really believe he'd stop if you gave him the card back? She asked quietly. That question pinned me in place. Probably not, I admitted, thinking of his last line downstairs. He'd just find a new way to keep you tied to him. There it was, the hook I handed her without even realizing. She let out a long, shaky breath, then looked up at me. Then please don't tell me to call him and make peace later. Her fingers dug into the cushion, knuckles standing out. I can't do another round of him twisting everything I say. I'm not asking you to reconcile, I answered, glancing at Mark. I told him to stay away from this building. I skipped the prophecy part about her turning on me. That line slid into some dark drawer in my brain instead. Mark's jaw shifted like he was grinding his teeth. So now we're all in this, he muttered, looking between us. You just drew a line in the sand with a guy we barely know. The word we sat heavy because it meant our home, our bills, our peace. What was I supposed to do? I snapped, heat rising in my chest. Let him stand downstairs shouting her name all night. We locked eyes and I could feel him searching for any crack in my conviction. He must have seen the doubt there because his shoulders finally sagged. I get protecting her, he said, rubbing his temple. I don't get volunteering to be her attack dog in a fight we didn't start. That one stung, more because it wasn't completely wrong. Jenna's face crumpled at the phrase and she turned away from him. I didn't ask for any of this, she whispered, voice rough. I didn't ask to be hit with accusations from two sides. She curled tighter on the couch, clutching the pillow like a shield. Instantly, I stepped toward her and away from him, which was the whole problem. Hey, no one's attacking you, I said, even though it kind of sounded like we were. We're just trying to figure out how to handle this. I felt Mark's stare burn into the back of my neck. Lines were forming in the room, and I was the one drawing them. That night, Jenna posted something vague on her social media. A black background, a few lines about escaping a controlling partner. Within minutes, comments and messages started pouring in. I watched her thumbs fly as she replied, shaping the narrative in real time. Should I mention he showed up at your place? She asked, turning the screen. It might warn other people what he's capable of. She blinked rapidly, eyes shining with a mix of fear and adrenaline. Part of me thought it would escalate things, part of me wanted justice. Write what you need to write, I told her against my better judgment. If you feel like speaking up helps you, do it. I ignored the way Mark's head snapped up at that. He looked like he wanted to disconnect the Wi-Fi out of pure self-preservation. Within an hour, one of her friends sent screenshots from his account. He was posting his own version, calling her a liar, hinting about money. He's already smearing me, she hissed, shoving the phone into my hand. The comments beneath his post multiplied while we watched. He's telling people I robbed him. She paced the living room, steps short and choppy. He's acting like I'm some kind of parasite who leeches off everyone. Her voice climbed higher with each word, and I could feel my blood pumping. You want me to message him? I asked, thumb hovering over his profile. Part of me wanted to unload, to defend her, to burn his side down. Part of me knew it would only feed the fire. That part stayed quiet because anger is loud and persuasive. No, that's what he wants, she replied, breathing hard. He wants you pulled into the mud so you look just as messy. She stopped pacing and stared at me with two bright eyes. I just need to know you're on my side in this, that's all. There it was. The real question under every other question. Of course I'm with you, I answered without leaving space for doubt. Inside, a smaller voice asked what that loyalty might end up costing. Mark turned the TV off and tossed the remote onto the table. I'm not playing referee in some online war, he said, heading toward the hallway. If he comes back here, we call the police, that's where my involvement ends. He walked away, but the distance stayed in the room. Jenna snorted and flopped back onto the couch. Wow, glad he's so emotionally invested in your sister's safety, she muttered. Her tone dripped with something between sarcasm and hurt. I winced because I knew exactly how that sentence would sit in my head later. He's just tired, I said, and even I didn't buy it. He worries about the fallout of stuff like this. She rolled her eyes and shot me a sideways look. Yeah, well, must be nice to only worry about fallout and not bruises. That line gutted me, even though she hadn't shown a single fresh mark. I let that detail slide out of focus because it clashed with the story in my head. Suddenly, anyone who didn't match my level of outrage felt cold. That's how the world shrank to me and her against everyone else. By the time we went to bed, my nerves were scraped raw. I brushed my teeth and stared at the mirror, trying to quiet my brain. Mark leaned against the doorway, arms folded, watching me. This isn't going to stay between them, he said, voice low. It already isn't, I answered, rinsing my mouth. She's here, he knows where we live, the internet knows we took her in. Saying it out loud made my stomach lurch. I had turned our apartment into a war zone without reading the fine print. She's spinning it like we're her rescuers. He rubbed his brow like it hurt. That means when the story flips again, we're going to be the next villains. At the time, I thought he was being dramatic. Now I know he was giving me a preview. I brushed him off that night because I didn't want to hear it. I chose the version where I was the protective sibling and he was paranoid. I was loading a weapon I didn't realize she would eventually aim at us. The red alert popped up and my stomach lurched. I stared at my phone while the number refreshed again. We were short, not by a little, by a chunk that mattered. Behind me, Jenna laughed at something on the television and it grated. "Mark," I called, voice sharper than I meant. He walked in, drying his hands, saw my face, stopped moving. "What happened?" He leaned closer and looked at the screen without touching it. "There are charges I don't recognize," I said, pulse pounding. 3 hits from the same store, 1 from a ride app. All new, all on my card, all recent. I scrolled and my throat tightened when I saw the dates. "That's the day she borrowed your wallet for groceries," he said quietly. I remembered her waving it, promising to bring back change. I also remembered her coming home with almost nothing useful. My cheeks burned and I hated that he noticed first. "You sure this isn't you?" he asked, not accusing, just careful. I wanted to snap at him, but the answer was obvious. "I didn't use my card that day," I replied, louder than necessary. The air in the room felt dense, like it pushed back. Jenna walked in mid-scene, hair up, wearing my hoodie again. "What's going on?" she asked, grabbing a drink like nothing was wrong. I turned the phone toward her, hands trembling just enough. "Did you use my card for anything besides groceries?" She glanced down, then up, then back at the screen. "Oh, that, yeah, I picked up a few extra things." She shrugged one shoulder, almost casual, almost bored. "You told me to grab what we needed, remember?" "This is not just bread and coffee," I said. "There's a ride charge and those store totals are high." My voice shook and I hated how obvious it sounded. Rent hovered in my head like a countdown clock. She rolled her eyes and held out her hand. "Let me see, maybe they double charged or something weird." I did not hand over the phone and her expression tightened. Mark watched the exchange like a referee who already knew the ending. "You said you were just going for basics," I went on. "I also got stuff for me, I'll pay you back." She lifted her chin, defensive now, eyes bright. "Do you want me to starve while I'm looking for work?" "That's not what this is about and you know it." I pointed at the ride app charge again, trying to stay steady. "Where were you going that day that needed a ride?" The question landed between us like a dropped dish. "The bus was late," I panicked. I didn't feel safe waiting. She tossed the explanation out fast, no pause, no breath. "You want me to stand on the street alone at night?" Guilt snapped at my ankles the second she said alone. It was 4 in the afternoon, Mark cut in from the side. He folded his arms tight, jaw working once slow. She shot him a look that could slice glass. "Thank you for the timestamp, super helpful." I could feel the fight pulling me in 2 directions. Part of me knew the numbers did not lie. Another part could not stand the thought of her stranded and scared. I chose that second part because it felt kinder. "Fine, just don't charge anything else," I said. "We barely covered rent this month, I need you to understand." The word barely hung there like a threat only I heard. She spotted the crack and leaned right into it. "You're mad about helping me with food," she said. She pressed her hand to her chest, eyes wet. "I left everything behind to get away from him and now this." She gestured around the room like the walls were judging her. "I'm mad that you didn't tell me first," I answered. "I'm not your bank, you can't keep sliding things without asking." My hands moved as I talked, chopping the air. I was trying to look firm, but it came out shaky. "I said I'll pay you back," she repeated, voice rising. She turned toward Mark and pinned him with a look. "Do you think I'm using you too, is that it?" He hesitated a second too long, and that was my answer. "I think we need to track what's going where," he replied. He held his ground, but I saw the fatigue in his eyes. "This affects both of us, it's not just between you and her." He glanced at me when he said both, a quiet reminder. Jenna flung herself onto the couch and grabbed a cushion. "You know what, forget it, I'll figure something out." She hugged the cushion tight and stared at the blank screen. Her silence felt heavier than shouting, which was the point. Later that week, I came home earlier than usual. The apartment was quiet, or at least pretending to be. I heard a tiny click from the bedroom and moved slower. Something in my chest already knew I would not like what I saw. The door was half open, just enough for a view. Jenna sat at my desk with my laptop open. She was scrolling through something, eyebrows knit, mouth tight. I watched her body freeze when she realized I was there. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She snapped the laptop closed so fast it rattled the desk. "I was just checking my email." "Relax," she replied too quickly. The lie was thin enough to see through. "That's not your account," I said, stepping inside. I pushed the laptop open before she could block it. My messages with Mark stared back at both of us. The last one was a thread about money and boundaries. "You were reading our conversations." I heard the hurt in my own tone and hated it. She stood up, hands raised, eyes wide and shiny. I saw my name and freaked out. "Okay." "You still kept going," I said, tapping the trackpad. "You scrolled, you clicked, you read all of it." I scrolled up and saw exactly how far she had gone. Every frustration, every worry, laid out with her sitting there. "What did you expect, Sam? You've been whispering with him for weeks." She took a step forward, chin up, cheeks flushed. "You never say any of this to my face, just be." Behind my back. The accusation landed harder because it had teeth. "I tried to bring up chores and money," I shot back. "Every time, it turned into you crying about your ex again." My chest hurt and my hands shook, but I kept talking. "It's easier to process things with my partner than start another blow-up." "So I'm the unstable one," she said, voice cracking on unstable. "I'm the hysterical mess you two need to manage." Her laugh came out sharp and humorless. "Did it ever cross your mind I might be picking up on your attitude?" "It crossed my mind that this is my computer," I replied. "You dug through private chats, you crossed a line." She flinched like I had slapped her. The irony of that hit me a second later. "You want privacy while you dissect me," she whispered. "I'm living on your couch, hearing you both complain about me breathing." Her eyes shone brighter and she blinked hard fast. "What exactly do you want me to do here?" "Start by not going through my stuff," I said, softer now. "Then maybe pitch in without me having to beg for it." I closed the laptop and hugged it to my chest. It felt like the only thing still fully mine. She brushed past me, knocking my shoulder as she moved. "I'm taking a walk," she muttered, grabbing her phone. The door clicked shut hard behind her, echoing through the apartment. I stood in the bedroom, staring at the blank wall, feeling like a thief. That night, Mark lay on the bed scrolling his own phone. I sat on the edge, spinning my ring every few seconds. "She went through our messages," I said finally. He stopped scrolling and looked at me, jaw clenched. "How much did she see?" he asked after a beat. "Enough to know we're not thrilled about the situation," I answered. He exhaled slowly, eyes closing for a second. "Great, now she has ammo." "She accused us of talking about her instead of to her," I went on. "And she's not completely wrong about that, you know." The words tasted bitter even as I spoke them. Owning that did not make any of this easier. "I tried talking to her," he replied, sitting up. "She either jokes, deflects, or cries before we finish a sentence." He rubbed his face with both hands, exhausted. "I'm starting to feel like we're props in her drama, not people." That phrasing stuck with me in a way I did not want. I lay back and stared at the ceiling, mind racing. Part of me wanted to march into the living room and confront her again. The other part wanted to pretend this could still settle down. Days blurred into each other after that argument. Jenna and I drifted around each other, careful and prickly. Chores got done in weird spurts, usually after a fight. Every surface of the apartment felt like neutral territory and mine at once. The flirting ramped up slowly, almost too slowly to catch. One night they were playing a card game while I finished dishes. I heard them laughing, loud and easy, from the couch. When I glanced over, she was elbowing him playfully, closer than before. "You're cheating," she teased, tugging at his sleeve. He shook his head and grinned in spite of himself. "I'm just better at this than you," he answered, tapping the table. I dried my hands harder than necessary and forced a smile. "Deal me a next round," I called, walking toward them. Jenna stretched across the cushions and made no move to shift. Last round actually, my brain's done counting for tonight, she said. Her foot nudged his knee, and he moved half an inch away. Another game, I suggested, standing there with nowhere to sit. Mark hesitated, looking between us like he felt the trap. I have an early meeting, he said, gathering the cards. My chest tightened even though his reason made sense. He's always busy now, Jenna muttered once he left the room. Must be exhausting living with me. She pulled the blanket over her lap, eyes on the card pile. I heard the hurt under the sarcasm inside. Things are tense, I admitted, sitting on the armrest again. This isn't what any of us pictured when you first came. I watched her face for any sign of responsibility. All I saw was wounded pride. Sorry I ruined your perfect domestic bubble, she shot back. She hugged the blanket closer, knuckles pressing into the fabric. Next time I'll make sure my breakdown fits your schedule. Her voice wobbled on breakdown, and I felt myself fold again. Another evening, I walked in to find her laughing in the kitchen. She sat on the counter while Mark stirred something on the stove. Her legs swung casually, almost brushing his hip every swing. He looked up when I entered, guilt flashing across his face for half a second. What's funny? I asked, dropping my bag a little harder than planned. Your partner was just telling me about his disaster of a first job, she said. She nudged his shoulder lightly with her elbow. He used to be this shy little robot at work. I never told you that story, I said to him. I tried to make it a tease, but it came out stiff. He caught the edge in my tone and backed away from the stove. You were busy on a call that night, she was here, it just came up. I watched the way her eyes flicked between us. She clocked the tension and tucked it away, I could tell. Relax, it's not a crime to talk about the past, she laughed lightly. That word hit me harder than it should have. Money kept disappearing in small, annoying ways. Groceries vanished twice as fast, yet dishes remained untouched. Mark started sending me screenshots of our balance during the day. Every notification felt like another small cut. Can we track who buys what? He texted one afternoon. I'm done playing guessing games with receipts. I stared at the screen while Jenna scrolled her phone on the couch. I typed out 3 replies before deleting every one. The next big crack happened while she was in the shower. Her phone buzzed nonstop on the coffee table, rattling slightly. Mark was at work, so it was just me and that screen. I stared at it, fought with myself, then reached. The name on the notifications made my chest clench. It was her ex, the one who was supposedly blocked. Messages stacked one after another, rapid fire. I tapped the screen before I could talk myself out of it. The thread opened to a wall of texts. His messages, hers, timestamps that made my head spin. I scrolled up and saw days of conversation, not silence. All while she cried in our apartment about how he wouldn't stop. Stop messaging me from burner accounts, one of hers read. 5 seconds later she had sent another. Just kidding, I know this number, relax. They were flirting and fighting in the same breath. She called my place free rent heaven in one line. Crashing at my sibling's spot, no bills, just drama, she wrote. I felt my stomach drop so hard I had to sit. My own living room suddenly felt like a set piece. Then I saw his reply about money. You still owe me from the card pulls, he wrote. You told me your sibling would cover it because they feel guilty. My vision blurred for a second and I had to blink hard. She answered with a string of jokes and one clear line. They'll pay, they always do, they think they're the hero. Reading that stripped something out of me I hadn't realized was there. The version of me I liked died in that sentence. I kept going even though every line hurt. She complained about our rules, called Mark uptight but kinda cute. Give me time, he'll relax, she added, followed by a wink emoji. My hands shook so much I almost dropped the phone. Farther up, I found a picture of a bruise on her leg. She had sent it to him with a caption about tripping. Your girl is clumsy, wiped out on the stairs, she wrote. The date stamp was 2 weeks before she showed it to me as proof he snapped. I actually said no out loud in the empty room. It felt insane, sitting there arguing with a timeline. Part of me still tried to spin it, maybe there were 2 bruises. But her exact angle, the same mark, gave me nowhere to hide. Water shut off down the hall and my heart leaped. I dropped the thread and placed the phone exactly where it had been. My pulse hammered in my ears so loud it drowned out everything. I backed away from the table like I'd touched something burning. Jenna walked out a minute later, towel twisted around her hair. She glanced at me, then at the couch, then at the phone. "You okay? You look like you saw a ghost," she laughed softly. The sound grated in a way it never had before. "I checked the bank again," I blurted. The lie came faster than the truth would have. "We're cutting it really close this month." That part at least was accurate. She sighed and flopped down, grabbing her phone. "I told you I'm looking for something, it just takes time." Her thumbs moved even as she spoke, unlocking the screen. I wondered if she could feel the heat from that chat thread. "Are you still talking to him?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Her hand stilled for half a second, then kept going. "Who?" she replied, way too light. We both knew exactly who. "Your ex, the one who came here." My throat burned as I said it out loud. "You told me you blocked him and were done." I watched her features arrange themselves into a fence. "I mostly blocked him," she answered after a beat. "He found ways around it," I answer, "sometimes so he doesn't escalate." Her eyes held mine, unblinking, almost daring me. "You act like I enjoy having him in my messages." "I saw the banner when it popped up earlier," I lied halfway. I had seen the name, just not this time. It looked like a lot of messages for someone who's supposed to be cut off. I didn't confess how much I had actually read. "You went through my phone," she snapped, sitting up straighter. That spin came out so fast it almost impressed me. "I can't believe you think that's okay after everything I've been through." There it was. Again, that shield she grabbed just in time. "I was sitting right here when it lit up nonstop," I countered. "I don't need to snoop to notice you're still deep in it with him." My palms were sweating, but I kept my voice steady. "I'm not judging that it's complicated, I'm upset you lied." "I didn't lie, I simplified," she said through clenched teeth. "If I told you every detail, you'd never let me stay." She wrapped her arms around herself, shrinking in on the cushion. I needed somewhere to land, not an interrogation. Mark walked in on that last sentence, keys in hand. He took in the scene instantly, eyes darting between us. "What did I walk into?" he asked, slow and cautious. The timing could not have been worse. "Nothing," Jenna answered quickly, wiping at her eyes. "We were just clarifying my entire life choices again." She let out a shaky breath that sounded rehearsed now. Mark's jaw tightened, but he didn't jump in yet. "She's still talking to him," I said, facing him. "The guy from downstairs, the one we confronted." My voice was dull, like the fight had drained out of me. I wanted him to react for both of us. "Is that true?" he asked, Jenna, gaze steady. She met his eyes for 3 long seconds before answering. "We have history, cutting contact overnight isn't simple," she replied. "He still has my things, he owes me money, it's messy." "That's not what you told us," he said, hands on his hips. "You said he drained you, you said you left with nothing." His tone stayed even, but the anger sat right under the surface. My skin prickled listening to him list her contradictions. "You two compare notes about me now," she snapped. Her stare bounced between our faces, furious and hurt. "Do you sit in bed and tally my inconsistencies?" The way she described it made us sound cruel. "You made us your witnesses," he replied, not backing off. "You brought us into the story, then changed the script mid-run." He took a step closer, still not raising his voice. "At some point we're allowed to notice the rewrites." She let out a bitter laugh and tossed her phone onto the table. "You know what? If you both think I'm some manipulator, say it." She stood up, fists clenched, breathing fast. "Stop pretending this is about concern and just admit you're done with me." "I think you're not telling us the full truth," I said. The words felt like walking off a cliff. "And that matters because we built our choices on what you gave us." My hands shook, but there was no way to hide that now. Her eyes filled again, but something in them looked colder. "I'm sorry my trauma doesn't come in a neat little file," she answered. She wiped under one eye and smudged whatever makeup was left. "I'm doing my best while you both audit my reactions." "You're not the only one struggling here," Mark added, quieter. "We're covering extra bills, we're losing sleep, we're arguing nonstop." He looked at me when he said arguing, and I felt my throat close. This situation is not sustainable. So what, you want me gone? She whispered. Her voice suddenly went small, almost childlike. You too want peace, so my safety just gets downgraded. She took a step back like we might physically push her out. Nobody is throwing you onto the street, I replied quickly. The instinct to reassure came back full force. But I need you to be straight with me from now on. Even as I said it, I knew I had nothing to enforce that. I'm straight with you about the important parts, she answered. She lifted her chin, holding onto that line. He made my life hell, that's the headline, the rest is noise. She folded her arms, case closed in her mind. Mark caught my eye over her shoulder and shook his head once. It was a tiny movement, but I understood every word he didn't say. We were not going to get anything beyond this version. The realization settled over me like wet concrete. That night while Jenna showered again, I went back to the couch. I opened my banking app and scrolled slowly through each line. Small charges here and there, some lining up with her errands. Others popped up at times she had sworn she never left. I did not open her messages again, even though I wanted to. It already felt like I had swallowed a barrel of secrets. Instead, I stared at the ceiling and listened to the water run. Every drop sounded like another thing I had ignored. Here's the worst part. Even with all of that in front of me, I still defended her outside that apartment. When friends asked why she was staying so long, I repeated her script. I told them I was proud of her for getting out of something awful. Back then, I genuinely thought I was protecting her. Now I can see I was mostly protecting the image of myself as loyal. He had warned me outside the building, and I had refused to hear it. By the time I realized how twisted the story was, we were already part of it. I heard a low laugh from my bedroom and my chest locked. It wasn't the television, it was Jenna's laugh mixed with Mark's voice. Two glasses clinked against something soft, not a table. By the third quiet giggle, I was already moving down the hall. The bedroom door was half open like the apartment wanted me to look. I pushed it with my knuckles and it swung wider. They were on my bed, side by side, shoes off, leaning together. Two wine glasses sat near my pillow like a punchline. Jenna jerked upright when she saw me standing there. Mark scrambled to sit farther away, almost slipping off the edge. Whoa, not much, she blurted, clutching the blanket to her waist. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it over everything. What is this? I asked, voice thin and ugly. It came out more like a wheeze than a question. Mark ran a hand through his hair and would not meet my eyes. Jenna answered first because of course she did. We were talking, she said, hugging her knees. Talking in my bed with drinks, I shot back. My gaze bounced between them, searching for anything undeniable. I already knew there was enough without lipstick on his neck. I had a panic attack, she rushed out, cheeks flushed. She gestured toward Mark with a shaky hand. He came in to check on me, I asked him to stay. Her tone made it sound like I was ungrateful for that kindness. In here, I asked, pointing at the mattress. You needed comfort, and this was the only place. I could hear my voice rising, and I hated the pitch. Mark finally looked straight at me. Nothing happened, he said, words slow and careful. He held my gaze like he was trying to pin me in place. She was crying, the couch is right by the door, she panicked. He winced at his own explanation, and so did I. You thought this would help me feel safe, I asked Jenna. My hand shook as I grabbed one of the glasses. Wine sloshed over my knuckles and dripped onto the blanket. It smelled cheap and sweet and completely wrong. Can you not spin this into cheating right away? She snapped. She swung her legs off the bed and stood up fast. I reached for the closest human while I was spiraling. She shoved a hand through her hair and glared at me. You reached past the couch, past the hallway into our room, I replied. I put the glass down harder than I meant and it rattled. You grabbed my partner and my bed at the same time. Each word burned my throat on the way out. Mark stood up, palms slightly raised like he wanted to calm us. I should have gotten you, he said, eyes on me now. She knocked, asked to talk, I thought I could handle it. He looked miserable and that almost made it worse. You thought you could handle my sister in my bed, I repeated. I heard how harsh that sounded and did not care. Jenna scoffed and crossed her arms tight over her chest. Look at you, jealous before you even ask what I needed. I have asked what you needed for weeks, I snapped at her. My voice cracked on weeks and made me angrier. I gave you my couch, my money, my time, everything. I gestured at the room, at my dresser, at my borrowed clothes. This isn't about the couch, she threw back. This is about you thinking every man wants me. Her chin tilted higher, eyes suddenly sharp and mean. If you trusted him, you wouldn't be losing it right now. Do not drag trust into this while you stand barefoot in my room, I answered. My hands clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. You read our messages, you dipped into my account, you hid your ex. I took a step closer and she did not move. That has nothing to do with tonight, she argued. She dragged the blanket off the bed and wrapped it around herself. I felt alone in the living room. I asked for support. She glanced at Mark like she expected him to back her up. He swallowed hard and rubbed his eyebrow. She knocked while you were in the shower, he said. She was shaking. She said she felt like someone was watching the door. He looked wrecked, but he still stood closer to her side. Why not sit at the table like normal people? I asked. Why climb onto our bed and pour drinks? My voice shook, but my feet stayed planted. The mattress behind them looked wrecked in a way I did not recognize. I thought you were going to fall apart if she left, Mark answered. He dragged a hand down his face like it hurt to talk. I was trying to keep everything from getting worse by staying calm. That logic just twisted my stomach tighter. You tried to keep things from getting worse by lying down next to her, I said. I laughed once, short and bitter. I guess congratulations, you unlocked the final level of stupid for me. Jenna's eyes flashed and she took a step forward. Watch how you talk to me, she warned, voice low. You don't get to trash me because you're insecure. She jabbed a finger toward my chest, breathing fast. I came to you for safety, and now you're acting like some jealous roommate. Don't, I said, swatting her hand away. Don't call this jealousy to dodge what you just did. My pulse thudded behind my eyes, making everything feel louder. I have bent over backward for you and you know it. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then smiled. Not friendly, not grateful, just sharp and cold. There it is, the ledger, she said, nodding slowly. All the favors you did so you could cash them in later. That's not what I meant, I answered, but she kept going. You wanted to be the savior, now you get to be the judge. She tossed the blanket back onto the bed like it was contaminated. Maybe he listened because I wasn't keeping score. That line punched straight through my chest. I turned to Mark, searching his face for anything solid. Did you tell her things you never told me? I asked quietly. He flinched and that was my answer. I vented, he said, voice rough and small. She was there, you were working late, it just spilled out. He looked more ashamed than defensive, which somehow hurt more. It wasn't about choosing her over you. You still chose my bed, I replied, each word heavy. Even if nothing physical happened, you crossed a line with me. I felt something in my throat give way. I'm done pretending this is fixable with more talks. Jenna scoffed again, arms spread wide. Oh, here we go, the grand speech, she said. You're going to toss me out because your ego got bruised. Her laugh sounded thin and mean at the edges. I'm going to ask you to pack your things, I answered. I surprised myself with how steady my voice came out. I can't live like this, I can't keep paying for chaos. I held her gaze and did not look away this time. You're serious, she asked, staring at me like I'd grown horns. You're kicking me out because I had a breakdown and your man cared. She shook her head in disbelief, rubbing her temple hard. You really are more like him than I thought. You can throw all the comparisons you want, I said. My hands were already pulling drawers open, grabbing her clothes. You went through my messages, used my card, lied about him, and now this. I tossed a handful of shirts onto the bed between us. She grabbed the pile before it slid off the comforter. You don't get to scream at me and touch my stuff, she snapped. She dropped the clothes back into her bag with jerky movements. Her breathing grew loud and uneven in the small room. You asked for a few days, I reminded her, dragging out her second bag. That turned into weeks, into bills, into this mess. The weight of the bag made my shoulder ache. I did not put it down. Mark stepped aside as I moved toward the hallway. He looked like he wanted to speak and did not dare. Jenna followed, still wrapped in the leftover blanket like a cape. We marched in tight silence that felt louder than shouting. In the living room, she spun on me and pointed at the door. "And what, you expect me to just walk out tonight?" she demanded. "Where exactly do you think I'm going to sleep?" Her eyes shone fierce, but I could see the fear underneath. "You have friends," I answered, throat burning. "You have the same phone you used to blast him online." I set her bag down near the entrance and straightened up. "You can call someone who isn't already paying your rent." She stared at the bag like it had insulted her. "You're unbelievable," she breathed, voice quiet now. "You were all over social media about protecting me, remember?" She mimed typing on a phone with quick little jabs. "I protected you based on what I knew," I said. "I don't regret wanting you safe, I regret ignoring what came after." My skin felt too tight for my body. "I can't fix what happened with him, but I can stop this part." Her jaw clenched and she grabbed her phone from the table. "Fine, you want to throw me out, we're not doing it quietly." She scrolled fast, thumb flying over the screen. "Let's see what Mom thinks about this little eviction." The word mom hit me like a sucker punch. "She doesn't know the details," I warned, stomach dropping. "She's going to hear one version from one person." My head already pounded with the future call. "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you turned on me," she replied. She hit call and flipped the speaker on, holding the phone between us. Ringing filled the room long and loud. I wanted to bolt and stayed rooted. Our mother answered on the third ring, voice tired. "What's going on? It's late." Jenna inhaled like she was about to go underwater. "Mom, I need you to hear this before it gets twisted." I closed my eyes for a second, knowing what was coming. "She's kicking me out," Jenna started, voice already shaking. "I left a dangerous situation, I've been staying here, and now this." She laid it out in 3 tight sentences, clean and loaded. Our mother didn't pause long. "What do you mean kicking you out?" she demanded. "Where are you supposed to go at this hour?" Her voice sharpened. "With every word." "Ask her," Jenna said, pushing the phone toward me. She decided tonight is the night her abused sister becomes a burden. That phrase sliced through my ribcage. I took a breath and grabbed the phone. "I'm not putting her on the street," I started. My voice sounded thin compared to theirs. "I'm asking her to stop living here because this can't keep going." I fought to keep my voice steady. "She has nowhere else," Mom cut in, not interested in nuance. "You know what she's been dealing with there." The there hung between us, vague and heavy. "You promised you'd help her until she got on her feet." "I promised before I saw the rest," I answered. I paced a short line in front of the door. "She's still talking to him, she went through my stuff, she's crossing lines." It felt pathetic trying to compress all of it into one sentence. "So you're upset about privacy while she's trying to survive," Mom snapped. "That's what this sounds like to me." Her disappointment reached through the phone like a grip. My throat tightened and I swallowed hard. "Surviving doesn't include drinking with my partner in my bed," I said. I yanked the words out before I could chicken out. The room went silent on the other end for a beat. Then Mom exhaled sharply. "Explain," she ordered, all warmth gone. "Because right now this sounds like jealousy and drama." Jenna watched my face, eyes wide, almost thrilled. She seemed ready to adjust her version based on my next move. "I walked in and found them lying there together," I said. "They say nothing happened, but they were comfortable enough." My voice fractured, uncomfortable. I can't live with that level of betrayal in my own space. "Oh my God," Jenna cut in, grabbing the phone from me. "You hear this, right? She's making up affairs because we talked." She paced in front of the couch, blanket dragging. "He listened because you don't, and now I'm paying for it." "Enough," Mom snapped, shocking us both quiet. "Both of you listen to me." The sharpness in her tone jolted something old in my chest. "I am not taking sides in some soap opera right now." "You already are," I muttered under my breath. Of course she heard it. "I heard my child say they're being tossed out," she replied. "That's the side I am on, the one facing the door." "I am facing the door too," I said louder now. "Except I'm the one paying for it, cleaning it, sleeping behind it." My voice shook, but I kept going. I am allowed to decide who stands on which side. Mom went quiet again, just breathing on the line. Finally, she spoke, softer but still sharp. If you do this, you and I will have a problem, she said. Understand that before you touch another one of her things. The threat landed exactly where she aimed it. I stared at Jenna's bag by the door. I pictured holidays, visits, every future event with that sentence slotted in. My hands started to shake again. Then I guess we have a problem, I whispered. I was surprised I could even say it. Jenna's mouth dropped open, eyes huge. She looked at me like I had set the whole building on fire. I took the phone back and lifted it toward my face. I love you, but I am exhausted, I told Mom. I have done everything I can think of, and I'm done sacrificing my relationship and sanity. My vision blurred and I blinked hard. You're choosing him over blood, she shot back. Her words hit like small rocks. I hope he never hurts you because you won't have us. The line cracked slightly and then went dead. The room felt weirdly loud after the call dropped. Jenna stared at me like I was a stranger. You really just did that, she said, disbelief all over her face. You actually turned our own mother against you to get rid of me. I didn't turn her, I answered, voice raw. She made her own choice just like you made yours. I pointed to the bedroom, unable to help it. You built this, Jenna, I'm just finally saying I'm not living inside it. She laughed once, short and sharp with no humor. You'll regret this, mark my words, she said. She zipped her bag hard enough that the pull bounced. You think he's staying after this mess? That's between me and him, I replied. You don't get to light everything on fire and then narrate the ending. My palm pressed against the door handle, slick with sweat. For tonight, this is the only thing I can control. She grabbed her phone charger and stuffed it into the bag. You owe me for the ride, she said, not even looking up. I stared at her, stunned by how fast she pivoted. She shoved the phone in her pocket. You're really asking me for money right now? I asked. My voice came out thin, almost hysterical. You've drained my card and now you want cab fare as a tip. It was almost impressive in the worst way. You want me gone, then help me get gone, she replied. She lifted the bag with a small grunt and swung it over her shoulder. Or do you want me wander? Ing around town at midnight alone. There it was again, the threat of danger hung between us. I grabbed my wallet with hands that no longer felt like mine. I pulled out enough for a ride and maybe a cheap room. My stomach turned as I pressed it into her hand. This is the last money you get from me, I said. She stared at the bills, then at my face. For a second, I thought I saw a flicker of something like guilt. If it was there, it vanished fast. You'll text me when you calm down, she said confidently. I opened the door and the hallway air rushed in. She stepped out, then turned back and leaned against the frame. Don't forget to post about what a savior you are again, she said. Her eyes raked over me one more time. Take care of yourself, I answered, because I'm apparently wired that way. It felt stupid and true at the same time. She rolled her eyes and started down the hall. Her bag bumped the wall with each step until she turned the corner. I closed the door and locked it with shaking fingers. The click echoed through the apartment and through my chest. For the first time in weeks, the couch was empty. The emptiness felt both terrifying and like oxygen. Mark was standing near the hallway, hands loose at his sides. He looked like he had aged a year and one night. You actually did it, he said, still sounding stunned. He didn't sound relieved, just wrecked. I don't know if I did the right thing, I admitted. I leaned back against the door because my legs felt weak. I just know I couldn't keep living like that. My voice cracked on the last word. He nodded slowly, eyes dropping to the floor. I never meant for it to get this far, he said. He paced a small circle and then stopped again. I should have shut down every late-night talk, every flirty joke. Did anything happen that I don't know about? I asked. The question sat there like glass between us. He ran both hands over his face and took a breath. No, he answered and held my gaze. She touched my arm, she sat too close, she asked for details. He spoke in short bursts, like each sentence weighed something. I liked the attention because everything between us was tense. He shook his head at himself. But I didn't sleep with her, I didn't kiss her, nothing like that. He looked almost offended at the idea. I messed up by letting it exist in that gray area. That phrase hit me hard because everything about this mess was gray. I don't think I fully believe you, I said quietly. I watched his face fall just a little. But I also don't think you're the one who wrote this script. My anger felt tired, not sharp. He nodded once, accepting that half-trust. I'll take the couch tonight, he said. He grabbed a blanket without waiting for my answer. I don't expect you to play happy couple after this. I should have told him to stay in the bed. I should have insisted we talk longer, dig deeper. Instead, I let him lay down out there alone. I went to the bedroom that still smelled like spilled wine. I stripped the bed fast, like ripping off a bandage. Every wrinkle in the sheets made my stomach twist. I stuffed everything into a bag for the laundry room. My hands would not stop shaking. When I finally sat down on the bare mattress, the silence roared. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, lighting up the room. A new notification from social media pinged across the screen. My name was tagged in something Jenna had posted. I opened it because of course I did. Her status was a long paragraph about family choosing men over sisters. Comments poured in from relatives and old friends. Half of them were already calling me heartless. One message from Mom popped up under it. She will always have a place with me, it read. Nothing about me, nothing about what I'd said earlier. I closed the app before I could keep scrolling. My hands hovered over my phone for a long time. Text her, block her, explain more, say nothing. Every option felt wrong and not enough. I opened a different app instead. I went to a forum I'd lurked on for years. The one where people throw their mess at strangers. I hit create post and stared at the blank box. The cursor blinked like it was tapping its foot. I typed the title first. I let my sister crash at my place because she was struggling, so she blew up my life instead. It looked dramatic and exactly right. I took a breath and started writing. I described the door pounding, the money, the messages. I laid out the version I had seen, not the one I wanted. I explained the bed, the call, the bags at the door. I did not hold back on my own mistakes. The more I typed, the more my chest eased. Not because it fixed anything, but because it organized the chaos. I ended the post with the question that would not leave my head. Did I finally draw a boundary like a sane person, or did I just abandon my sister when she needed me most? Then I hit post and watched it go live. Comments started appearing faster than I could read them. Different voices, different angles, all staring at the same story. I sat there in the dark, waiting to hear who they thought I was.